On Tuesday, a federal judge struck down a Florida law that says that minors shouldn't have access to gender-affirming care. Now, that's basically transgender surgery to try and transition people. What do you make of that decision?
This is a classic example of judicial activism. The law is an excellent law. It protects children from outrageous abuse and harm relating to cutting off body parts, hormonal injections resulting in permanent sterilization. So it was an excellent law, and we are confident that at the end of the day, it will be overturned, if not by the Federal Circuit Court, then by the United States Supreme Court. It's just a matter of time for it to go through the system and be corrected. But the good news is that laws like this are being passed in states like Florida across the country, particularly what we call red states or freedom-loving states that respect parents' rights and respect protection of children from outrageous permanent harm. That is what this, quote, transgender movement is all about. We're not really talking about even changing gender. We're really talking about distorting gender, hurting gender, and affirming confusion. Confusion that statistically results in a suicide rate 12 times higher than that of an ordinary person. So this is not medically resolving anything or psychologically resolving anything, and it has terrible, terrible, inevitable outcomes in most cases across the country where it takes place.
To what extent is this a phenomenon in the United States where children are transitioning, are going through this kind of gender surgery, and particularly where it goes against the parents' wishes? How are the state getting involved in that?
Well, it's in the public schools, first off. The teachers' unions, with their leftist ideology, are pushing this in public schools across the country. Even in what would be viewed conservative communities, may still have a liberal public school district that's promoting this and looking for it. Many public school teachers themselves are a part of the LGBTQ movement or lifestyle, and so they're looking to groom children and to victimize children. So it's in our public schools where this is happening. That's why school choice and school vouchers is so important. And I think one reason why it's booming and being adopted state after state across America, so parents have a choice to take their kids out of what many see as spiritual death camps called public schools.
How does your organization get involved in protecting parental rights here?
Well, we at PJI, we take on public schools that are caught secretly grooming kids. We don't get angry, we sue. And we sue very aggressively. Right now, we're suing the Attorney General of New Jersey for ordering every public school teacher not only to use pronouns that may violate the conscience of the teacher, to not affirm confusion in a child, but also ordering the teachers to lie to parents when children have some kind of gender confusion or uncertainties. So we're litigating these cases. We're suing the Attorney General. We're taking on cases like this across the country. We're also empowering parents to deal with challenges by social workers who are trying to take children on this pretext as well. On our website, pji.org, we have a free article called 12 Steps to Protect Your Children from CPS, or social workers. It's free, it's available on download. It's something that people in the UK can utilize as well. In other countries, it's very common sense, it's very easy to follow, and it's critical if parents want to make sure they're going to protect their children from being taken by zealous social workers or social advocates.
So how are the child protection services trying to take away children from parents? And what's that got to do with transgenderism?
Well, let's say a child's in a public school and the child tells it, like here's a case we had. A young teenage girl tells her friend tells the teacher that she's gender confused, not sure if she's really a boy or a girl. Teacher tells the school counselor calls a social worker talks to the girl, says, oh yes, you must really be a boy on the inside. I mean, biologically, scientifically, that's nonsense. But social worker then talks to the family. This is a Christian family. They believe in a traditional biblical Christian worldview. They look at science, they're intelligent. And so they say, no, we're not going to affirm this. We're not going to encourage this. Social worker says, okay, then you're an abusive family. We're going to take your child. They take the child. They try to get full custody to start the injections immediately. We went into court. We got the injections prevented. For 2 years we fought, and we got her given back to her parents. And at the last hearing, the girls told the judge, you know, Your Honor, also, I just want you to know, I really don't feel like a boy anymore after all. That girl would have been permanently sterilized by the state of California, by Governor Gavin Newsom's bureaucracy, had we at Pacific Justice Institute not stepped in and fought for 2 years to protect her from that travesty. That is not unusual. That is becoming commonplace throughout the United States. We at the United States, we need to follow the example of other countries like the UK, like Sweden, like Denmark, who are saying, no way, minors cannot have this procedure, and follow common sense. Europe is leading the way in a very positive example, and I hope that the radical leftists in the United States, like Joe Biden, our president, and radical leftists like him, wisen up and realize they are not in the trend in the right direction. They're in the wrong direction, and it's going to be to the disgrace and harm of so many in this country because they're not watching in the facts, and they're not observing what other more progressive countries are doing in Europe.
Do you view this as a kind of Marxist or communist orientated philosophy to separate parents from their children? I know famously in the Soviet Union there was this statue of a child who reported on his parents and they celebrated him. So do you see this as a Marxist movement?
Oh, without question, this is modern day Marxism. They're not trying to sell it economically because they can't. We have such a large middle class. Americans know where prosperity comes from. So they're selling their communism through a social agenda, which includes the breakdown of the family. If they can tear down the family, they can take the children. If they can take the children, they can succeed in taking the nation. They know that. Mao Zedong knew it, Joseph Stalin knew it, and the leftists and the teachers' unions and the LGBTQ agenda, they all know it as well. So there's a clear movement through public schools to overtly indoctrinate children in worldviews different than their families, and then to condemn their families, and then even report their families on the pretext that that child needs to be put in a more progressive, quote unquote, safer family environment. It's not the abnormal, it's becoming very normal. And that's why we at Pacific Justice Institute do our work without charge, always protecting parents in these challenging circumstances and challenging the public schools.
What do you make of this case in Nashville where there was unfortunately a transgender school shooter whose manifesto it turned out to be very anti-Christian and so on? Do you think that there is actually a sort of security threat here where you're enabling children who are very sort of severely mentally unwell, who may have access to guns, to do something very bad?
Oh, there's a clear risk for this, and it's actually medically explainable to some degree. First, the child often has mental issues. When they get in these injections, they often develop bipolar dysfunction. In fact, about half of transgender or gender-distorted children have a bipolar condition. But it gets even worse because you see the testosterone that they give these girls, their brains are not made to be able to deal with that level of testosterone. They don't have the white matter, if you will, in the brain that males have, which helps to keep the testosterone at bay and in check. So they can become actually much more compulsive, more erratic, and more dangerous. Conversely, males, their brains are not made for the high levels of estrogen that they're injected with. What does that result in? After 1 to 2 years, it results in depression, deep depression, leading to high levels of suicide. So where they're talking about more violence and instability with the females, or more depression and suicide among the males, it's very dangerous, not just to the individual, but to society as a whole. And we need to respect that if we're going to prevent future tragedies like this from happening in the future, like happened in Tennessee.
Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.